As Harry and Meghan land back in the US after their not royal tour of Nigeria, what was the point of it and what did it actually achieve?
And with new proposals for a ban on sex education for under nines and an end to gender dogma in schools, is this finally a return to common sense teaching?
Plus, after the birth trauma inquiry, well, I believe that the reason our maternity services are so appalling is because too many midwives are prejudiced, politicised, and frankly, not doing their jobs properly.
And how Taylor Swift, who I still wouldn't recognise if she sang in my face, is giving the economy a £1 billion boost with her tour. I'm not going on it. Well, hello and welcome to The Reaction with me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Sarah Vine. We'll be here every Wednesday on the Daily Mail's YouTube channel, so make sure you like and subscribe so that you never miss an episode.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have gone back to their day jobs, whatever they are, after their whirlwind, quasi-royal tour of Nigeria.
But there was a cloud hanging over the Sussexes as they landed back in California, following a row over their charity's operating status.
Well, a spokesperson for the Archewell Foundation said, "We have diligently investigated the situation and confirm that the Archewell Foundation remains fully compliant and in good standing. Due payments were made promptly and in accordance with the processes and procedures. Furthermore, all necessary paperwork has been filed by the Foundation without error or wrongdoing." Well, there was an error.
That's good, isn't it?
Because the cheque got lost in the post.
I know, but who uses cheques in this day and age?
Me. I still have a chequebook and my bank want me to give it up. And you know what? If you're watching, Mr. Bank Manager, I shan't give it up. I'm not giving it up.
The cheque's in the post.
Cheque's in the post. But the fact is, for a few days, the foundation was unable to raise money or spend money because it was described in American parlance as delinquent, which is somewhat like Harry's behaviour.
Very like
frankly.
Harry's behaviour. But I mean, this royal tour of, sorry, I shouldn't say royal, this tour of Nigeria was very much the Meghan Markle show, wasn't it?
You wouldn't know it was
really
anything to do with Harry and the Invictus Games, which Nigeria have joined up to.
Yeah.
It was all about, I'm discovering my colonial roots.
But also, poor thing, he really is a spare.
Yeah, he is.
You know, it's just poor, endless spare. I just slightly did feel a bit sorry for him because she really did steal the show.
Dominated it. He was always one step behind. The cameras were always on her.
Yeah.
The people wanted the selfies with her.
Yeah.
She had about 3 or 4 different outfit changes a day.
Expensive clothes
really
as well.
Expensive.
I mean, she was wearing a lot of money in those dresses. And the thing that I think is that wasn't it? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they leave Britain because they were upset at the intrusion of their lives?
Yeah, they hated the media.
They wanted to live private lives as ordinary people. That tour that wasn't 2 ordinary people going to visit a nice country, was it?
No.
It was very much. I mean, they clearly, that was obviously a lie. They don't want privacy. She wants to be famous.
And
also, she was talking about her children. She's perfectly happy to share information with them, about them, when it suits her.
On her terms.
You know, all the little, aperçus that Lilibet has been saying, all the little clever things. She's very bright for a 2-year-old.
Apparently Lilibet said, "Mummy, I'm very like you.
I see myself in your eyes.
I see myself in your eyes."
I have to say, I don't think my
that.
children could actually speak when they were 2.
No.
And maybe they're quite thick. Maybe hers are just geniuses. I don't know. But it is that thing where you just think, it was all just a load of nonsense.
You just know that they run up against a brick wall in the United States. What's happened to their career? Nothing. He's done the book. Netflix, what's happening about Netflix documentaries? They've been dropped by Spotify, so they had to relaunch themselves with that semi-royal tour, which actually, to me, Sarah, felt more like a presidential tour. And we know that Madam thinks she's got a potential career in democratic politics because that story broke a couple of years ago, and it felt like she was on campaign mode.
Yeah, no, definitely.
The issue she was talking
about.
It
was very much her showcasing herself, and he was just sort of coming along for the ride. I mean, maybe that's what he wants in his life, and it's perfectly possible that he just wants to be a beta male.
Yeah,
but
it just shows how was never was she going to accept the royal life, because she was always going to have to be one step behind him, one step behind William and Kate.
Her role was that of a consort, not of a leading actor.
Yeah,
and she needs to be a leading actor in her life. But I mean, that's okay, but just be honest about it.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, and don't put everybody through this whole thing. Don't gaslight an entire nation. Don't gaslight the whole of Britain into thinking that we've behaved appallingly towards her, because that wasn't the case. People liked her. It's just that she didn't like us. She didn't want to do she didn't want the assignment.
I don't think she ever did want it.
No.
I think she thought the idea of unveiling a plaque in Merthyr Tydfil on a November afternoon had very little appeal.
Rain, in a pair of...
And meeting the Lord Lieutenant of the county.
Ghastly.
Yeah, boring, tedious, and very little publicity. And I think she thought, that's not quite what I thought it was going to be.
Whereas with this, you know, she's very much the protagonist, she's very much the star of the show, and that's how she likes it. And I think, you know, there's stuff about her being 48% Nigerian, so that would, you know, that added to it all. Maybe she's going to go into Nigerian politics.
Well, good luck with that. Because, but also, Harry, of course, he's had these court cases in Britain about protection officers because he doesn't feel safe. He doesn't think he can bring his family to Britain because they won't feel safe. What? You feel safe in Nigeria, where there are endless reports showing it's one of the most lawless states in the entire African continent?
Yeah.
I mean, the hypocrisy of it.
I don't think anyone's going to harm the little children in the UK. It's not that sort of country.
No. No,
you know.
But it just.
I mean, they might come up to you in the street and say hello, but I mean, I don't think.
Well, we wouldn't know what the children look like.
No,
we never
none
see
of us
them.
have ever seen them. I mean, they haven't. I mean, I don't know. I don't think the little one has even met its cousins.
No, which is very sad. And I still think at the King's coronation, Harry should have had those children there because they would have been part of history in that formal photograph.
I mean, when they grow up, their parents have deprived them of their birthright.
Yeah. Even if they just have
through
the older
child.
Through
their own sort of vanity and psychosis.
What I thought was interesting though, Sarah, when they landed back in California, they didn't look quite as cheerful, did they? In fact, I would say, perhaps, as one who's been there with my own partner, I wonder if they'd had a bit of a falling out because she was marching ahead,
wasn't she? Wasn't she?
Yeah.
She was very cross and he was very dejected.
Carrying the bags.
Very hangdog.
And he was 10 yards behind her.
I mean, I don't know whether we should read too much into that because I just think, as you say, spouses don't travel well together.
No.
When I was married, I always wished that my husband could go on a separate flight than me, preferably with the children.
He didn't like flying,
so that I
did he?
could just sit on my own.
Yes. But they didn't look a picture.
No,
I just thought, now the cameras aren't there. Is this what life is really like for the Sussexes?
Yeah.
Dull drudgery, and they're going back to dull drudgery.
Well, it's marriage. I mean, it is marriage, and you know, travelling is not a lovely thing. But yes, I agree.
Now we do have to mention, of course, the new portrait of King Charles. You must have seen it. The artist Jonathan Yeo has used the red of the Welsh Guards uniform to quite liberally. It also features an endangered monarch butterfly on the shoulder of our king, and it's divided opinion. What did you say about it?
Well, I said two things. I said, is this after it's been vandalised by Just Stop Oil with red paint? And then the other thing is, he just looks like he's standing in front of the gates of hell because it's just so red, and that poor monarch butterfly is going to get burnt up.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's sort of vaguely satanic.
Yeah.
I mean, Johnny Yeo is a brilliant portrait artist, and the face is amazing, I have to say. And also the hands are amazing. The detail is brilliant. I'm just not sure the paint is quite right. It felt like it was too much of a sort of political statement, you know.
Well, I think
official portraits should just be not that.
Particularly as it's the first one since he
became
king.
But also because they have to be timeless. I'm not sure that portrait is timeless.
No, and it was Camilla's idea, the Queen's idea, that Johnny does the portrait because he did a portrait of her when she was the Duchess of Cornwall, which was actually quite nice. I thought it made it look rather old.
He is brilliant.
Yes,
he is really, really good.
And he's done Blair.
Yeah, and he is rightly our leading portrait. I'm just not sure. I don't know. I think he just should have kept it a bit simple. Why not just do a simple portrait of him in his uniform?
Apparently, he's been taken aback by the hostile reaction to it on social media in particular, because a lot of people have said, was the artist drunk? Did the artist kick over a tin of paint, a red tin of paint? Because there is a lot of red. He's going to be known as the Red King.
He is. I think the thing is, it could be one of those portraits that looks much better in the flesh than on the screen, than on camera. But I don't know. I still think I think it's just 10% too gimmicky for an official portrait.
And it's 8.5 feet tall, so it's a pretty imposing. So it's going on show in a gallery in London, so people can get to it. I'm going to go and have a look at it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth going to have a look at.
Yeah.
Anyway, let us know your thoughts by emailing reaction@dailymail.co.uk or comment below.
Now, still to come, at last, gender ideology in sex education in schools are to be banned for the under nines, but is it going far enough?
And why I believe that maternity services in this country are so appalling because too many midwives just aren't very good at their jobs.
And is bribing fat men the right way to get them to lose weight?
Well, this can only be described as a triumph of common sense. Schools will no longer be able to teach about gender identity under new rules set to come into force tomorrow.
So pupils under the age of 9 will also no longer receive sex education in guidance which will be statutory, meaning schools must comply with the law.
Now, all the lefties are really cross about this.
Oh, yes.
Really,
so
really
you
cross
know it
about
must
this.
be right.
I would say, I think it's broadly a very good idea. But what I would say, there is one caveat that I have, which is this. The reason 9-year-olds need to be taught about sex is because of internet porn.
Yes.
And the problem is that it's very likely, extremely likely in fact, that they will be introduced to internet porn via a smartphone in school before the age of 9.
Isn't that awful?
What's happened is that teachers, quite rightly I think, have thought, well, okay, we need to, get ahead of this so that they're not, completely bamboozled by it. Because the thing about it is, the debate about smartphones for under 16s being banned is very important because it's all part of this much bigger picture to do with children having access to the adult world unfettered and uncensored via their smartphones. So, a 9-year-old, it's perfectly possible that they could come across porn, hardcore porn, on somebody else's smartphone in school. It only takes one child who's got an older brother or an older sister or an irresponsible parent to go and show it around the school, and then they're watching stuff that they don't understand. And that's why we've ended up teaching young children about sex. So I agree, I think it's a good idea, but I think then there needs to be a much broader strategy to try and mitigate the influence.
But because Miriam Cates, who did the TV debate, the smartphone debate, she's made the point that some children in schools under the age of 9 have been taught about oral sex. I'm sorry, that is too young.
No, that is too young. Completely agree.
And talking about choking and all sorts of sex, and also.
But the reason they're talking about choking and oral sex
is because
of porn.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I know that everyone thinks I'm mad, but the thing is I've been writing about this for years, saying the government needs to do something about it. And everyone says you're mad. You can't put the genie back in the box. Yes, you can. You can block things. Netflix, you can't watch Netflix unless you have. An account and a code.
That's right.
So it should be the same. These things should be behind paywalls.
They should. And the other thing that the government are doing, and it's quite right, it's Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary, give her some plaudits here. They're saying that gender ideology is out. So none of this nonsense. 72 genders. There aren't 72 genders, actually. That is ridiculous. A couple of years ago, so maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I wrote a piece in the Mail when Paul Dacre was still the editor of this paper, because the number of genders on Facebook had got to 56. And I said, oh, look, one more and we've got Heinz 57. We are now at 72 and rising. And it is absurd. But, this government is saying, enough.
But we're
not having that.
That's not sex education. No. That's just gender ideology. It's just propaganda. It's different. It's separate. So the two are separate things.
Yes, they are.
So one is driven by ideology and propaganda. The other is, I think, driven by necessity, because I think teachers are genuinely quite worried that children are being exposed to things that they don't understand and that it could make them vulnerable. But
But parents should also be involved in
this,
because
as a parent,
they should be talking to their little ones about
I was pretty horrified when my daughter was given, they were shown the video, the infamous Year 5 video. So they would have been 10. That's when they're taught. That's when they're taught about the birds and the bees. And sort of the left, the kind of liberals always say, oh, well, we're not teaching them about sex. We're teaching them about relationships, and we're teaching them about respect for other people. And we're teaching them, no, but actually you're teaching them about sex, because that's the outcome. Because they all come home and go, tee hee hee hee. We just had, sex education. So
I heard somebody from the Family Planning Association saying, well, it's quite right that teachers in class talk to a 6-year-old that you've got to respect people who are different. Said to the person from the Family Planning Association, what do you mean who are different? Well, people who are trans. I said, you're telling me that children of 6 are identifying as trans in class, and you think that's okay?
Yeah. Yeah, but it is to an extent.
This is a madness.
But it is to an extent a reflection of where we are in society, that children this young are need to be taught about this stuff.
Be children?
Exactly. I don't think you should be taught about. I don't think you should be given sex education until you get to secondary school. That's my view.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the right time. I think that's when you're sort of entering that space.
Hormones
and I
all
don't
that
think you
stuff.
should be allowed a mobile phone until you get to secondary school. Anyway, we'd love to know your reaction. Comment below or email reaction@dailymail.co.uk.
Still to come, is bribing fat blokes, not women, fat blokes with hundreds of pounds, the right way to get them to lose weight?
Discrimination. Why can't I get 400 quid for losing weight? Anyway,
why can't I have 400 pounds for being slim?
Listen, slim people have it all. You don't need any more. Why I think the reason maternity services are so appalling is because too many midwives are not doing their jobs properly.
And how is Taylor Swift, no, I still have no clue who she is or what song she's ever sung, is giving the economy £1 billion boost with her new tour? I'm not going on it. I'm not going to watch any of the concerts.
Trust me, you'll end up on it.
Now, my allergic reaction this week. How on earth did appeal judges rule that the sentence handed to the Nottingham killer, Valdo Calacone, was not unduly lenient? Just to remind people...
It's a hospital sentence.
Hospital sentence. He has been detained indefinitely in a hospital because the court accepted that he manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. So
let's just remind viewers, he killed...
Two 19-year-olds.
Two Nottingham University students.
And a 65-year-old school caretaker. He then got in the school caretaker's van, who he'd murdered, in my view, not manslaughter, murdered, and drove it at 3 people. And he was convicted of attempted murder. Yeah. So attempted murder he was convicted of. Yeah. But the 3 killings, it was manslaughter. Yeah. So that's illogical in its first place.
Well, because he's schizophrenic, he's ill.
Yeah. So
he's mad, not bad.
The Attorney General took it back to the appeal court, and the appeal court upheld the ruling. No wonder people think, Sarah, the justice system is on the side, not of the families, the victims, of the perpetrator. Yeah. It's horrible. Yeah. No wonder the families of the 3 victims, just remind ourselves, it's Ian Coates, who was the school caretaker, quite close to retirement.
Yeah, very close to retirement.
And the 19-year-old friends, Grace and Manny Kumar, who went to help her best friend, Barnaby Webber. They were leaving, they'd been out partying from a university party, and they were both massacred by a crazed man with
who, by the way, was already on the police's radar. They knew about him.
He'd assaulted a police officer.
Yeah.
So the family say they're going to fight on because they want a public inquiry into the way the police investigated it, into the sentencing, and I guess that's part of how they carry it with the grieving process.
I just think, yes, maybe he has got mental health issues, but that doesn't mean that he didn't murder them. He did murder them. He murdered them. It was premeditated. He went out to kill people, and that's what he did. Don't call it manslaughter. It's not manslaughter. Manslaughter is accidental. Manslaughter is where you accidentally fall out of a window and land on somebody and kill them.
He intended to take life.
He intended to take life. That, for me, is the fundamental difference. Yeah. That's the line. And I don't care if that intention was born out of, sanity or insanity. That doesn't matter. The intent is there.
And they didn't.
Anyone who intends to take life is obviously mad in some way, because that's not a sensible thing to do.
They didn't even do a toxicology test on him, which is extraordinary. Because he could have been filled with all sorts of weird drugs.
Yeah. I think he should be in a proper prison, and that's that.
And also, by the way, his care in the hospital is costing around £350,000 a year.
How can that be? How can it cost the 300? I don't understand what they're doing.
What are they doing to it?
Is it gold-plated cell?
What is he in, the Ritz?
It's ridiculous. You could live in Claridge's for that.
Shocking.
So a bit of a gear change. My allergic reaction this week, which will divide opinion. Obese people, blokes actually, not ladies, which is obviously discriminatory.
Yes.
In the UK it's called Game of Stones.
Oh, that's clever.
I love a pun. Anyway, they're going to be given £400 if they manage to lose a certain amount of weight over the period of a year. And they'll get little text messages on their phone that say things like,
"Hello, Fatty Hardbuckle."
It won't say "Hello, Fatty." Oh, it should say "Hello, Fatty." But it will say, "Don't go to the kebab shop."
Yeah.
Or, "Have you eaten a salad today?"
Yeah.
But I think it will work because I tell you why.
It's the maddest thing ever.
It's the maddest thing ever. But I think it will work because I think men love a game, don't they? They love a challenge.
They love £400 for doing nothing.
They're very competitive men, very competitive. I'm not sure £400.
Where did they get that figure from? Yeah, it says things like, walk a different way home from work so you avoid the kebab shop.
Yes.
And what about then, and don't have a big bacon sign? And they're trying, one of the places they're doing the trial is in Glasgow, home of fried Mars bars, I tell you, and big pints of beer.
Yes.
It's the booze capital of Britain, the drugs capital, and that's where they're doing the pilot.
Still £400 too. I personally think they should put everyone on Ozempic and then job done.
What? But why are fat women not getting £400?
No, I know, that is the main question, is why are fat... Well, because I don't think it will work for women.
Why not?
Because women are not, I don't know, they're not...
Well, I think it's a ridiculous idea. I don't know who came up with it. Who is the Secretary of State for Health? Can't even remember anymore.
Idea.
Victoria Atkins, isn't it? Victoria Atkins, it's a silly idea.
Silly, Victoria.
Silly idea. Well, we'd love to know what your thoughts are. Sarah thinks it might work. I think it's frankly patronising and ridiculous and a waste of money. But do email reaction@dailymail.co.uk or you can comment below.
This next story is shocking. Having a baby in the UK now is far from being either joyful or safe. The state of this country's maternity care has been laid bare in a new inquiry, which has found new mothers are dying in greater numbers than at any other point in the last 20 years. It also found that a shameful 20,000 women suffer postnatal post-traumatic stress disorder due to their experiences in the labour ward. And also, newborn babies are more likely to die in this country than in almost any other.
Isn't that a shocking statistic when you think this is one of the wealthiest countries in the world with the fourth largest exporter, overtaking France and Japan, and we are supposedly proud of our NHS, which is the closest thing to a national religion.
Is I don't know a single woman who has had a really positive or good maternity experience. So this is a parliamentary inquiry instigated by two MPs, Thea Clarke and Rosie Duffield, cross-party.
Yeah.
Both Thea had a terrible birth, and it's very interesting, but it doesn't tell us anything that most women don't already know, which is that having a baby in this country, it can be quite a difficult and risky experience. And I've talked to loads of friends over the years, and I've had babies myself. And the universal experience is one of humiliation, being treated as though your instincts don't matter, being nagged, being cajoled, being told off, being made to feel like a kind of massive inconvenience. I mean, it's really not nice.
And it's interesting because as a man, I have no... what shocked me most to read the report is that it is the norm for a woman to have a bad experience in maternity.
That's what they said. They said good care is the exception rather than the norm.
And of course, we have this sort of rather touchy-feely, warm glow about the maternity service because of the programme Call the Midwife with Jenny Agutter. And of course, that couldn't be further from the truth.
I mean, I think it's funny. So I wrote about this in the paper today, and I've had quite a lot of emails, a lot of them from women who had their children back in the 1950s, and they all said that there was a different level of professionalism in midwifery and also in nursing. And I think over the last, when I had my children, I had quite a bad experience, which I've written about, which I won't bore the listeners here with. But I have to say, I think that it's deteriorated markedly over the last sort of 20 or 30 years. And I think there's a sort of culture in midwifery that it's very politicised, it's very haranguey, it's very sort of, there's a kind of, there's a lot of political correctness. I can remember when I did my antenatal classes, this was 22 years ago, I remember being shown slides of Native American women giving birth squatting in glades and thinking to myself, I don't really understand how this is relevant to me.
No.
And, being told that, pain relief was unnecessary, and if I was a good mother, I wouldn't need it because I would be birthing properly, and therefore pain relief wouldn't be necessary because it was a natural thing.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I know this is a bit of a cliche, but I'm going to say it anyway. If men had to give birth,
I was going to say
none of this would be happening.
Wouldn't the whole point? Isn't that the whole point?
Literally none of it.
If men were in labour for 14 hours or 26 hours and being bullied and cajoled, Wouldn't the whole thing be different?
Completely different.
And
anyway,
of course, there are very few men in the maternity service, most gynecologists,
exactly,
midwives are women, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, anyway, it's such a huge topic, but we're going to be joined now by Susanna Stanford, who is a campaigner for the charity Baby Lifeline and is an advocate for patient safety. This report is so, it's so shocking, but it's just not unexpected, is it?
No, there really isn't anything new in it, and I think that's probably the saddest thing about it. It is, I think, unique in looking at birth trauma as a specific outcome, and that's very, very important. I do think one has to be a little bit careful about concluding that bad care is the norm, because there is good care happening around the country. But and obviously this inquiry only sought submissions from women who've experienced trauma, so they were getting one view. But then these women, sharing truly harrowing descriptions of poor care, being dismissed, belittled, having their concerns ignored, often with the result of physical harm too. And they're from all over the country. And I think the really key point to take on board is that unlike the maternity investigations at individual trusts, such as Morecambe Bay, East Kent, Nottingham, this report paints a national picture of maternity services frequently failing mothers, both at the time and afterwards. And
I also think that, when I had my two, I had a terrible, very bad experience with my first, and then as a result I had an elective cesarean with my second. And then I decided not to have a third because I just didn't feel I wanted to go through the experience again. And we see the birth rate really dropping off in the UK. And I wonder whether do you think it's got something to do with the fact that women are just maybe a bit scared of having children?
Yes, I think it is known that women who experience post-traumatic stress are much less likely to have further children. It is something that they choose not to do. We also do have reports of women being too scared to have their children in hospital, which is really a real sign of the situation, because actually they should be able to access care. That's the whole point. And that is our difference between here and the description you just gave of the picture in the glade. Well, we have the medical care available, and it should be increasing safety.
No, it should, absolutely. And do you think that there's an issue, because I personally think there's a bit of an issue with the sort of midwifery community, because I feel that, my experience, and actually the experience of a lot of people I've spoken to and friends and relatives, is that there are some very brilliant midwives, but they are not, by any stretch of the imagination, the norm. Is that there are quite a lot of midwives who are dismissive, rude, who treat women like sort of pieces of meat. And I think this is something that came through in the report, is this sort of fundamental lack of respect for your body as a woman, that you're just sort of considered to be a vessel, and that, you should sort of submit to all the sort of humiliations of pregnancy and birth without feeling, in any way reserved about them. And I do think that, one tends to think of midwives as being sort of wise women and women who understand, have a sort of magical quality to them. But I'm afraid a lot of them just seem to be quite mean.
Yeah, it's something that definitely comes across in many of these descriptions in the report. And that's really tragic, because again, we have good care. It's really very sad when it is not being delivered to women. And there is, as you were describing earlier, there is a real angle around a natural birth, and that was encouraged, and that was actually encouraged, was being encouraged to try and reduce the cost around cesareans at one point, with really devastating results. And actually in this country, our antenatal education is very skewed as well. So women are being sold this idea of the natural birth, and that somehow it's going to make them a good mother. And I think that's really, really unfair.
And a lot of people say also, oh, mothers are too old these days. My mother was 20 when she had me, and she was in labour for 3 days, and I nearly died. It's not, again, this is blaming mothers all the time. Oh, you should have your baby earlier. Oh, you should do more Pilates. Oh, you should eat more chicken tikka wraps, or whatever it is. It's always the mother's fault. And I remember when I was in hospital, my baby was posterior presented. No one noticed it. A stream of midwives came and basically shoved their hands up my whatever it was, in a very unpleasant manner. None of them seemed to notice that my baby was literally never coming out, or would have taken days and days and days to come out. And And yet they made me feel terrible for asking for pain relief because I was in agony, because they'd given me medicine to speed up my labour because my labour wasn't happening because she was in the wrong position. And I was sort of vomiting. I could barely breathe. And I was made to feel awful. And then when the epidural didn't work, they said, oh, well, we told you it wouldn't work. And I was just like, I'm sorry. What have I done to you? Why do you hate me so much? And reading this report, I think that comes through, is that sense of, you're here to try and help me. I'm a human. I'm not just a sort of annoying person on your shift that you've got to deal with. And I think that's what's been lost.
Well, yeah, you are speaking to someone who had a failed anaesthetic for a C-section, so they too can be very traumatic.
Yeah.
And then again, that was another situation where I wasn't listened to. So we're coming back to the same themes, and I think one of the really key points is that it's the not being listened to at the time when you are extremely vulnerable. You are trusting your care to complete strangers, and you have to. You have to, and I think that is taken for granted. The extent to which women have to trust healthcare professionals is taken for granted. And we really need them to pay more attention to that and to really respect women and to respect their bodily experience. Because when they know something's going wrong, very often they're right. Very often something is going wrong. And when women don't feel safe, again, often they aren't. So we, and then of course, if you're not being listened to and you have a situation which is perceived as life-threatening, then that is where it becomes enormously traumatic for the mother. And good communication and compassionate care are considerable mitigating factors for reducing the likelihood of trauma.
Yeah.
So if you can get that right, we can prevent trauma. It shouldn't be happening. And I think a lot of the comments and the suggestions in the report are very much in response to trauma, but we've got to get upstream and try and prevent it happening.
That was great of Susanna, particularly to share that experience she had, which was clearly horrific.
Yeah, awful. And can you imagine having a cesarean without anaesthetic?
No, I can't.
No, exactly.
And then she had post-traumatic stress.
Yes, and as you said, there isn't a third.
There isn't a third. Well, what do you think? And have you had your own experiences you could share with us? Let us know your thoughts by commenting below, or you can email, of course, reaction@dailymail.co.uk.
Now, we love reading your comments and thoughts here on The Reaction. Here is what you thought about King Charles not meeting Prince Harry in London last week. Pauline says, the King and Prince William are letting Prince Harry know that he isn't trusted, and they do not intend to allow him to continue behaving like a spoilt brat. About time, I say, quite right.
Karen says Harry's not attempted reconciliation. He wanted to use a meeting with the King to make his Nigerian visit appear to be endorsed by His Majesty's government. To reconcile, you have to build bridges, not use people. That's a very good point. I hadn't actually thought
of that. That's a very good point. Rosemary says, is that my mother? It might be my mother.
Hi, Rosemary.
Hi, Rosemary.
I bet Rosemary.
Harry does not have a job and could have come over to see his father any number of times before the King was back on duty. Just another ploy to be a victim on Harry's part.
Spot on.
Well done,
these
Mum.
are. We like these. And Donna says, isn't the British royal family toxic?
Yeah.
Prince Harry's doing incredible events to help others. What is Prince William actually doing in England? Well, he's supporting his wife, who's fighting cancer. He's got 3 children.
Yeah.
He was doing an investiture only the other day, and he's taken on the role of the Air Corps.
I think that's Harry messaging.
Do you think that was Prince Harry?
Could be Meghan.
Meghan.
No, it's Meghan. We also
Did you know I don't like Meghan?
Shut up.
I don't.
Stop saying that. We also discussed the latest in Donald Trump's hush money case. Anna says, I don't care what Trump does privately. The United States needs a strong leader, not a demented old man. I love you. That's brilliant.
We do love that. Iris says, I don't understand how Joe Biden is still sitting in the White House. And we don't think he knows either how he's in the White House. Do you think he even knows he's in the White House?
Maybe
Does he know
sometimes.
He's the president?
I don't know.
No.
I don't know.
So, listen, if you want to message us about any of this week's talking points, you can, of course, comment below or email reaction@dailymail.co.uk. It's time for our favourite part of the show, the showbiz reaction with our showbiz supremo, Katie Hind. Taylor Swift's tour de force is about to hit Britain. Who? And apparently it'll bring a £1 billion boost for the economy. Well, I'm not going to say it. Or maybe I should.
Yeah, you should. You can come
Honestly,
with me.
it's
I've got a
made
spare
for you.
ticket.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Just remind
You have to
people
pay for your own
watching-
hotel, though.
Hotel?
It's not in London.
It's not the first night is in Edinburgh.
What sort of date are we going on? I'm not that sort of boy, Katie.
I mean, the thing about Taylor Swift is that she is well, she once caused an actual earthquake, but she is also an earthquake. She just, wherever she goes, money just pours in because she just has such reach.
She hasn't, and she's also going to influence the American election as well, isn't she?
Yes.
How come?
Yes.
Well, because people just do what
Yes.
Taylor does.
Yeah.
Really?
It's kind of like what Simon says.
It's
like
really
what Taylor
weird.
says and does. Yeah.
And is she a Democrat or a Republican?
Democrat.
Of course she is.
Very
yeah,
much
bound to
so.
be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So
Yes.
she's coming here. When is she coming?
So she comes the first week of June.
Right.
So, and her first night is at Murrayfield, the rugby stadium. Was it rugby stadium? The stadium
Scotland?
in Edinburgh. So Edinburgh will be full to the rafters of mothers and daughters dressed like Taylor. So they're estimating that she's going to make £1 billion for the British economy.
Because the hotel bookings.
So you've got
and-
hotel bookings, travel,
Yeah.
food, now clothing. So there's an average of £56 is the average amount
For an outfit.
for an outfit. Now it's basically you have to replicate Taylor.
So are you going to wear sequins?
I might do.
Do you want me to?
Yes.
You could just wear what you wore to the Amber
So-
thing.
Yeah, I could.
I mean,
wear my
it
pink suit.
is. I mean, it is. So, for example, we've read today that the accommodation is an average of £121 per person. Now, I've been looking at hotels in Edinburgh, and the cheapest you'll get one for at the moment is £500.
Wow.
So
For those nights.
it really
I'm not
has
going.
made an impact.
I'm
It
not
really
going.
is making
I'm
an
not
impact.
paying £500 to see a concert.
So I mean, she's just a license to print money, isn't she? And people, I mean, the amount of requests I've had for could you get me some tickets? Can you
Yeah.
get me tickets because
What's her most famous song?
Blank space, probably,
Yeah.
I'd say.
yeah.
Blank Space?
Yeah.
Space.
I've
Never
got
heard
a
of
blank space, baby, and I'll write your name.
Never heard of it.
On to something else. Ant McPartlin. He's had his first child.
Do you know who Ant McPartlin
I do,
is?
Ant
Good,
is
Ant
good,
is dead.
good, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So,
yeah.
He's the slightly taller one.
and
now.
he's
Yeah.
done he's posted that sort of classic.
He
Slightly,
left his wife.
Yeah. Well, he left his wife. They didn't have children together. We don't really know why. We think, they never had children, put it this way. And now he's gone off and he's had children with somebody else, and he's posting internet pictures of himself with that classic sort of slightly cringy black and white
Meghan-y
internet
picture.
Meghan-y picture
Yeah.
of him cradling a half baby that you can't quite see because obviously privacy.
Yeah.
And next to a tattoo of a sort of tree with names on it, not including hers, obviously. I actually feel a bit sorry for her. She stuck with him. She was instrumental, presumably, in making his career.
Very much. I mean, they met when they were teenagers.
Yeah,
she was
that's
she was in a pop band called
Yeah.
Juice, and they met at like the Smash Hit Hole Winners
Yes.
Party. I don't know if you remember those.
Yeah.
And she has been at his side. Her pop band is disbanded, and she was very much. She's a makeup artist now. She's the head of makeup on Strictly, and she was at his side as he went. Whoosh. And obviously he then became quite troubled. I mean, she
Yes.
would lock
He
him
went
in
through
the
a
house.
very difficult patch, didn't he?
And she would. I mean, she says, she would lock him in the house to save him from himself. He was in such a bad way, and she really supported him. And then he kind of went to rehab. Then he finished his marriage to Lisa. With no children, as you say, Sarah, and he then began a relationship with his personal assistant,
That's classic.
and it just destroyed him.
That's what
So, of course, so his
Destroyed
wife
her.
knew the personal assistant.
They were friends.
Oh,
They were
dear.
friends. And
But also the thing is that I think poor Lisa's 48, so that window of opportunity for having babies has closed.
Yeah.
And that's because she spent most of her life looking after a massive baby, i.e. Ant. Well, and that's the thanks she gets.
I mean, you speak to any makeup artist
Yeah.
across our industry. They all know, what she did to keep him safe.
Yeah.
And she's the one. I mean,
But it's
the
such a
ultimate
classic
betrayal,
male
isn't it?
thing.
Yeah.
It's a classic male thing to do. So many times it happens is that they have the kids, they don't, the woman does all the work, and then
Yeah.
and off they bugger. Oh, can't say that. Off they pop. With a slightly younger model, with which they suddenly have, children.
So the tattoo which Sarah mentioned was a tree, and it has Amzi written at the top, which is what Anne-Marie's shortened name is. And then she's got two daughters who refer to Ant as Dad. So their names are in the tree too, as well as their 2 dogs. And so for Lisa to have to see that, you know, he didn't, as we see, he didn't
doesn't
need
to put
do
it
that.
on Instagram.
No.
I just think it's a bit
No.
mean.
Yeah.
I actually think it's a
Of course
bit
it is.
cruel.
Yeah.
It's rubbing her nose in it.
And I think as well, the sad thing as well is that you know, they obviously, Lisa and Anne obviously had a lot of celebrity friends together, who have now come out congratulating, you know, him and his new wife, and it must just be so heartbreaking for her.
Shame.
Well, I hope she finds a nice replacement.
Well, thanks, Katie. Fabulous as ever, even though you still haven't converted me to Taylor Swift. But that's it for today. Do join us again next Wednesday for more reaction to the stories making the headlines.
And make sure you like and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. See you again next Wednesday. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.